It's the BBG, not the BBC. You're listening to the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester.
Welcome to Wednesday's programme. It's, the sun has gone away. It's a dull and pretty wet day in the northwest, and it's cooler as a result of that, which is probably no bad thing for me. I've, as usual, got a couple of very interesting guests lined up for you today. Tweet me between now and the end of the programme with your thoughts. I look forward to hearing from you. And, well, without further ado then, let's just do the show. You know, that's a bit loud, isn't it? That's better.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, you will remember me chatting back in February, you've got to say it properly, February, with Larry Gaiters, Bishop Larry Gaiters, nationally syndicated radio host based in New York City. African-American man, conservative. He's going to, well, I suppose, give us his thoughts on what has been happening in the United States and elsewhere over the last 8-9 days or so. Larry Gaiters this hour. And in the second hour, I'm delighted to welcome to the programme for the first time John Klyczek. Now, John has a master's degree in English and he's taught in college. He's written a book called School World Order, the Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. This is hugely interesting. And John has agreed to come on the programme, John Klyczek, in the second hour. The book School World Order, Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. So busy old show again today. It always is, when isn't it? And like I said, Twitter, do tweet your thoughts on what's been happening. Did the YouTube thing yesterday morning about identity politics. Somebody complained about it, presumably, and it was deleted by YouTube. Now, as you know, I don't like even talking about that because it implies that I'm looking for some sympathy or that I am trying to demonstrate that I am important and I am being targeted, which isn't true. I just wanted to point out again that it seems that the whatever programs are running Google, YouTube, if somebody complains about something and flags it, it seems that it is deleted immediately. And you're not given any inclination which part of a 57-minute broadcast, what particular statement caused any offence or any, I don't know, alarm, right? So what I want to say is you will be listening to this this is live right now, but you might be listening to the repeat on YouTube. Within the next few days or the next week or so, I'm going to stop uploading the radio show to YouTube, Google. Google couldn't give a damn about that, but there's nothing in it for me. And I'm not going to have it. All right, let's move on. Let's move right on. So with Prime Minister's questions today, it happens every Wednesday at midday. Well, it should do. It's been a bit hit and miss with coronavirus. Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, who replaced Jeremy Corbyn, and Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister. The death of George Floyd came up. Here's Keir Starmer's opening shot across the bows of the Prime Minister about George Floyd. Have a listen.
Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by expressing shock and anger at the death of George Floyd? This has shone a light on racism and hatred experienced by many in the US and beyond. I'm surprised the Prime Minister hasn't said anything about this yet, but I do hope that next time he speaks to President Trump, he will convey to him the UK's abhorrence about his response to the events.
Right, pretty straightforward. What's your response? He says Starmer. Then he went on to ask him a question, an actual question.
Mr. Speaker, the Telegraph this morning is reporting that the Prime Minister has decided to take direct control of the government's response to the virus. So an obvious question for the Prime Minister, who's been in direct control up till now?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me begin by associating myself absolutely with what the Right Honourable Gentleman had to say about the death of George Floyd. And I think what happened in the United States was appalling. It was inexcusable. We all saw it on our screens. And I perfectly understand people's right to protest what took place, though obviously I also believe that protests should take place in a lawful and reasonable way. On his more polemical point, let me just say that this government is, I take full responsibility for everything this government has been doing.
He takes responsibility for everything that has been going on. Nobody is asking any questions in the UK media, or nobody is even commenting on the truly bizarre spectacle of a parliament thousands of miles away from another country speaking about the murder of a single citizen. You might say that's a bit naive. Protests are taking place. It's got to be on their minds and blah, blah, blah. Okay, fair enough. It's quite extraordinary. And apparently a large number of people are protesting in London today. Hands up, don't shoot. Even though ordinary English policemen and women on the beat are not armed with guns. Ironically. Okay. So a group called Stand Up to Racism wants everyone in the UK to take a knee at 6 o'clock. At your front door, holding placards saying Black Lives Matter and hashtag George Floyd. Yes, the co-convener of Stand Up to Racism is Wayman Bennett. Here he is on Sky News this morning.
We'd like people to take a knee at 6 p.m. In solidarity with what's happened inside America, but also in solidarity with the disproportionate deaths of black people of COVID-19. And what we're planning to do is want people to do that outside their homes. They're socially distanced demonstrations. We don't believe that COVID has disappeared. We don't believe it's safe to open the schools. And so therefore, we are having demonstrations. We want them to be socially distanced. But their deep anger within the black community is reflected by the disproportionate use of the police inside this country. There's over 1,000 deaths of black people inside this police in this country without anybody being successfully prosecuted for, I think, wrongful killing. There's too many families that are mourning in the same way as they are in America that have been killed at the hands of the police, and there's no justice. And as long as there's no justice, there could be no peace. Yeah,
it's ironic. Last week saw the 10th and final week of Clap for Our Carers. And the instigator of that said, let's leave it now at 10 weeks. Today they're asking people to appear at their door, take a knee, and if you can, make a placard showing solidarity with George Floyd. Now, Zuby is a very successful rapper, author and podcaster. Went to uni at Oxford, I believe. He's got a very big following. I was in touch with him today. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Zuby was on Sky News this morning, and what he said made a lot of sense to me. I'll be very interested to get your thoughts. So Zuby is a black man, very successful black man, and a very well-educated black man. And he was on Sky with Adam Bolton, and I thought this was very good.
I think that in general, the race relations in the UK are significantly healthier than they are in the US overall. I think there are a lot of reasons for that, many of them historical, and that is understandable. At the same time, I feel like people do need to understand that, the past needs to be acknowledged, and we need to learn from the past. We don't want to repeat the same mistakes. What I don't think is particularly useful is, the past is immutable. None of us can change the past individually nor collectively. So I don't think it's particularly useful to always be looking backwards at things that can never be changed. I think it's important to think about what can be done in the here and in the now and going forward in the future to, make everything better, to have true equality, to not be demonizing each other based on immutable characteristics. I mean, it's quite obvious stuff, but I think that people who, regardless of what side they're on, I think people who seek to totally racialize this and see everything purely through a racial lens rather than through a human lens and view this as a human rights issue, a human rights violation. Because to be clear, this doesn't just happen to black people in America, right? This happens to people of all races. I mean, white people are killed by police more often in the U.S. than black people are. I understand it's disproportionate, and there are lots of reasons for that, but this makes it clear that it's a wider issue. It's not just simply about skin color, and I do personally find it quite tiresome when the entire conversation is framed that way. It's a factor. It's important. It shouldn't be avoided. But I think people need to widen the scope and think, okay, if we're talking about police specifically, there is an issue in certain police forces when it comes to how they deal with incidents, how they treat people in general, how they're trained, what the standards are. Those are really the things that I think would lead to solutions. And I think that's what people need to focus on rather than just random chaos and destruction. That really is just a setback. It doesn't help people.
I invited Zuby to come on the radio show, and he said he'd come on with me next Tuesday. I explained I'd been watching what he was saying on Sky News, and I wanted to explore this. You know, the notion that it's a human rights issue. Of course it's a human rights issue when a man, for whatever reason, and whether George Floyd was in the process of committing a crime, and I don't think there's a lot of evidence he was, whether he was or wasn't, for a guy to be face down on the floor, handcuffed, and to have a guy kneel on his neck for 9 minutes until he's dead, that's a human rights issue. That's not a black issue or a white issue or a Hispanic issue. Everybody faces this going forward, everybody. It used to be mostly something that people in ethnic minority or people from ethnic minority backgrounds used to deal with. It used to be. But we know there's an agenda unfolding that we're all facing that doesn't discriminate, and I'll come back to that briefly in a minute. So because we're into June now, we're entering Pride season, gay pride events, parades, etc. And it'll be different this year, Pride, because of coronavirus. You won't see the parades. It's all going to happen online, apparently. So, because of what's happening in the United States and here, Kay Burley decided to interview Black Pride. Yes. What is Black Pride, you big baldy gammon? I hear you cry. Black Pride is LGBTQ+++ people of African, Asian, Caribbean, Latin American and Middle Eastern descent. Oh yes. You see, this is identity politics in glorious sunshine. Pride came out of, back in the day, gays and lesbians and transgender people justifiably fighting for their human rights and for their lives, because they couldn't go out and about in many cities without getting their heads kicked in. They were lampooned, mocked, laughed at. They were discriminated against. There's no two ways about it. So pride was important, right? Gay men, women. What you looked like didn't matter. So that's long gone now. I know in certain parts of the world it's still dangerous to be gay, but in the West, it's very rewarding to be gay now. I would have said, or lesbian, or trans, or I don't know, unicorn or whatever. So basically, subdivide and subdivide, reduce, splinter off into new identity groups. This is insanity that I can't articulate. As somebody who speaks for a living, I find it infuriating. I can't find the words to describe how lunatic, how absolutely insane this is. It is ridiculous, right? So the co-convener of Black Pride UK is Phil Opoku-Jima. She is a woman of colour, obviously, otherwise she wouldn't be allowed in Black Pride. Malcolm X must be spinning in his grave. Black Pride? Right. You'll hear the Ginger Ninja first, and then you'll hear Phil Opoku-Jima, the co-convener of UK Black Pride.
Tell me about Black Pride, 15th anniversary. It's going to be very different this year, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's online, right?
Absolutely. And thank you very much for having me this morning. UK Black Pride, as you mentioned, it's in its 15th year and we are going absolutely strong. It's the start of Pride season. But I think where we're at this precise moment, when we can't divorce ourselves from talking about COVID and the disproportionate impact on Black and brown people, and also the fact that we are seeing protests up and down the the globe around what has happened with the brutal murders of some of our black siblings across the world.
Siblings. By the way, Holly Willoughby, who's the presenter of mid-morning television in England, was called racist because she said George Lloyd and not George Floyd. This is true. Was called racist. And very prominent black people said this is an example of subconscious racism. Now, I don't have much time for Holly Willoughby, right? But I've presented and produced television and radio at every level for a long time. And you get so much violence and death and destruction put in your face when you present on TV or produce on radio that saying George Lloyd and not George Floyd could happen to anybody. But the co-convener of Black Pride in the UK, she can't remember his name and refers to him as a sibling, but that's okay.
Some of our black siblings across the world.
Siblings, Jesus Christ.
So we are wanting to focus our energy on how do we combat loneliness and isolation? How do we make sure we come together in a time where it feels almost hard to celebrate who we are, but also remembering the intersections of us being black, women, gay men, workers, refugees, asylum seekers, and creating a safe space which will be virtual to connect with each other and to show that love and support and solidarity amongst how we see ourselves as the chosen family.
The what now?
But also remembering the
let's listen to that again, the last 20 seconds of it.
Intersections of us being black, women, gay men, workers, refugees, asylum seekers, and creating a safe space which will be virtual to connect with each other and to show that love and support and solidarity amongst how we see ourselves as the chosen family.
Chosen family.
How we see ourselves as the chosen family.
Yeah, the chosen family. We're the jailers of our own minds, people. We really are. Humanity, individually, we are the jailers of our own minds. You have a transhumanist depopulation agenda going on, a starvation agenda going on, and rather than confront that, everything is, you're a racist because you won't take a knee, I have it worse than you, historic slavery, and all of that. And while that's going on, while fools in London, Belfast and Taiwan and Timbuktu are holding placards up for a man they've never met, this is going on in the background. Listen to Thomas Moore from Sky News.
The coronavirus jumped to humans from bats, and it won't be the last disease to do so. Deforestation is bringing human settlements closer to exotic wildlife, making another pandemic more likely.
We analysed the number of unknown viruses.
Yeah, let me set this up. You heard Thomas Moore introduce the clip. Now, you're going to hear from Peter Vazak. Peter Vazak is a professor with the Eco Health Alliance. It has links to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Listen to what he says, and bear in mind while he is saying it, that people are killing one another metaphorically on social media, arguing over who's the biggest victim in the world and calling people racist because they won't accept that racism is endemic in our society, and calling them racist because they won't take a knee at their front door like a fucking idiot at 6 o'clock. Listen to what the doctor is saying and then tear your hair out.
More likely.
We analysed the number of unknown viruses that could emerge in the future, and
the number of unknown viruses that could emerge in the future?
We estimate there are about 1.7 million of them.
1.7 million unknown viruses that might emerge in the future. Well, if they're unknown, how the fuck can you put a number on them? But anyway.
Of the type that can infect people. So it's a really significant future threat. I mean, we only know of about a couple of thousand viruses. So we're really talking the vast majority are waiting out there to emerge in the future.
Imagine that. The vast majority of viruses are waiting out there like silent killers in the future. And then the Sky News medical correspondent sums it all up. Remember, while you're listening to what he's saying, go on to Twitter, go on to Facebook, and look at fucking retards arguing about race.
Rather than waiting for the next virus to come to us, the pressure is now on to use science to get ahead, identify the viruses most likely to jump to humans, and develop drugs against them now. After this pandemic, we need to learn the lessons and prevent the next.
Developing the drugs and the vaccines now for the 1,700,000, 1.7 million viruses that are hiding out there in the dark. Vaccines and medicine that you will be compelled to take as you are compelled to carry a digital health passport. While all of this is going on, money will be taken from your bank accounts through bail-ins by your fucking government to pay for unnecessary lockdowns that have destroyed your fucking lives and have destroyed your health. And while that's going on, you're screaming about your fucking identity. 'Twas ever thus, you might say. 'Twas ever thus, say. Clarence, Big Man Clements on the saxophone. Bruce Springsteen, Badlands on the Richie Allen Radio Show. 26 and a half minutes past the hour. Let's just get straight into it, because I want every second up to the top of the hour with my guest. He was on the programme back in February and you loved him and asked me to get him back. Delighted to have him back. He's a nationally syndicated radio host out of New York City, an African-American conservative commentator who's always got something interesting to say. Let's welcome back to the programme Bishop Larry Gaiters. Bishop Larry, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much, Brother Richie. I am doing great here in New York City, and it is such a great honor to be back on your powerful show today.
You're too kind. The honor is all mine. Thousands of people are on the streets in London, thousands on the streets in the north of the country as well. The media coverage of what happened to George Floyd isn't relenting, and I'm not saying that it should. A terrible thing happened. Larry, what's your take on what happened in Minneapolis 8 days ago or 9 days ago?
This is what I call, Brother Richie, the paradigm of manipulation through the paralysis of emotion. In the entirety of the riots, there is a hidden hand behind it. Because on yesterday, I was on Crowdsource the Truth. And to your listeners, if they want to hear the whole gamut of especially the psychological part of how the deep state has been manipulating and weaponizing Black emotion and pain, definitely go to our YouTube channel, which is Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. But in a snippet, what happened to George Floyd, okay, has nothing to do with racism whatsoever. All right, so Derek Chauvin and George Floyd knew each other, okay? And so I'm going to reveal to your audience today that the reason why that Black people constantly react to every time a white cop or a Black cop kills another African American, and it's because what we call problem reaction solution, where the deep state creates the catastrophe, Brother Richie, in order to solicit an emotional response from the people, from which the people are going to want a solution, which the deep state is going to give them long before the deep state ever created the catastrophe. They already had the solution. And so when we talk about the history of what we call the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. So then every single riot, and what I'm going to tell you right now, man of God, this is powerful. Every single riot is orchestrated, okay? It's staged by the Luciferian deep left. Now look at Minneapolis, Minnesota, okay? That is the headquarters of Antifa. Antifa, which is being financially subsidized by this Nazi, George Soros, okay, who is also a part of the Khazarian Rothschild dynasty. So then George Soros, who created both Antifa and Black Lives Matter, So then George Soros created these two entities to cause havoc and destruction and mayhem. So to answer your question, Brother Richie, the reason why that we're seeing riots, okay, all across America, because this is an attempt by the deep state to both destroy Donald Trump and the United States of America. So I'm going to reveal something to you today that is going to absolutely blow away the minds of your listeners.
Before you do that, where's the evidence that George Soros, because you see, when Soros gets mentioned on any independent radio program like mine, Jewish listeners say, Richie, your guest is prejudicial or is racist or is bigoted because there's no evidence whatsoever that Soros is behind Black Lives Matter or is behind Antifa. He's Open Society Foundation and what it does. We can, chat about what we don't like about that all day long, but surely Soros is not this all-powerful, meddling figure. Where is that evidence that he's involved in Black Lives Matter? How do we know that?
Yeah, well, number one, Brother Richie, George Soros, and to my Jewish brothers and sisters, what I'm about to say, I'm not an anti-Semite. This is not this is not an anti-Semitic comment. But you have to understand, brother, that darkness comes through what I call the compartmentalization of darkness. It's layered. So the open source society or the open society found through the Soros Fund Management Group. So if your listeners can just go online and look up all of the sublet companies and corporations and foundations and initiatives that George Soros owns, you will find both Antifa, okay, and Black Lives Matter. Now, personally, I'm not against Black Lives Matter as far as exposing police corruption.
Yeah.
My problem, Richie, is the weaponization of Black Lives Matter.
Well, what if Soros said, sorry to interrupt you, Larry. What if Soros said, look, I'm a lefty. My politics have always been on the left. I believe that blacks are disproportionately attacked by law enforcement. So I'm happy if some of my subsidiary groups, send money to Black Lives Matter. And I don't like fascism. So I would. Now you might say I'm playing devil's advocate, but I'm just saying what other people might be saying. Soros might say, "Listen, it's not as murky and sinister as you might think. I just like these causes." Why am I wrong?
Sure. And with all due respect, man of God, and I'm glad that represents you are a great and objective host. All due respect, you're wrong because number one, George Soros is what we call a geo and socio engineer. His job, his mindset is to destroy the fabric of our republic, okay? Because the United States of America, we actually have two constitutions. The one from 1776 that was ratified a few years later, okay, in 1781. And the second constitution that took place 95 years after 1776 in 1871, through the backing of Pope Pius IX out of the Vatican, through Rothschild money, created a second constitution to force the United States to be a corporation. So instead of us being called the United States for America, we are called the United States of America. So George Soros wants to totally fabricate and restructure our country by supplying millions of dollars to Antifa, okay? And not just to Antifa, but through Black Lives Matter. See, you have to understand, and I'm so glad that you're asking me these questions, Brother Richie. So then George Soros doesn't care about Black people. Okay, George Soros is a puppet master, okay, who is using, weaponizing, and not just weaponizing the pain of Black people, but manipulating the trauma and the pain of Black life in order to achieve his goal. Let me give you an example of that. Look in Minneapolis, Minnesota, okay? The headquarters of Antifa is in the suburbs of Minneapolis called Springfield, Minnesota. Well, there is a brick company called the Acme Brick Company, capital ACME. And so throughout the United States, we had found thousands of pallets of bricks strategically located in every city, whereas you're seeing riots take place.
I've seen those pictures. Yeah, I saw those pictures and very suspicious. But can that be linked directly to Soros? And listen, I'm not defending George. I don't like George Soros, Bill Gates, these billionaire so-called philanthropists, when they're really not doing anything that's of any good to working men like me. We always get stiffed anyway. Yeah. So I've seen these pallets of bricks which are very suspicious. How do we know that, Soros is behind any of that? And I'm not trying to be childish or churlish here, but Larry, you know what it's like. You're a radio host, you're nationally syndicated. My listeners will be absolutely up in arms if I don't ask for, some sort of proof here. Go ahead.
And you would, see, look at the Acme company. So the Acme Brick Corporation still is owned by Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, now Berkshire Hathaway out of Omaha, Nebraska is owned by the billionaire Warren Buffett. Okay, so in 2013, the Acme Brick Company, was purchased from a group called the Marmon Group, capital M-A-R-M-O-N. Okay, guess who owns the Marmon Group? The governor of the state of Illinois, Jay Pritzker. So Jay Pritzker, the governor of the state of Illinois, owns the Marmon Group, in which the Marmon Group, 80% of it is owned by Warren Buffett and the Berkshire Hathaway Group. Well, George Soros sits on the board of the Berkshire Hathaway Group, including the Marmon Group, including Bill Gates, who recently left the board of executives or the board of governors of the Marmon Group. They own the Acme Brick Company, who have placed thousands of pallets of bricks all throughout the nation. Why? Because these devils want to bring about the paradigm of manipulation by weaponizing the pain of Black people. This is a game that they've been playing. So you have to understand, Richie, that according to the Russian poet Alexander Pushkin, he once said that a deception that elevates us is dearer than a host of low truths. What does that mean? So then the global Luciferian deep state, George Soros, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett, who is trying to portray himself as this Sunnybrook Farm type of person, but these are devils. They're using, Brother Richie, they are manipulating and weaponizing the emotions of not just Black people, but American people who don't know who they are.
Why, Larry? Why are they doing that? So I'm look, this is an area of huge interest for me, and some of this I can definitely go along with, and I'm incredibly suspicious of billionaire philanthropists like the ones you've named, and why they would want to be involved in social engineering initiatives. And some of this is making a lot of sense to me. We're going to the top of the hour today. We'll do another segment another day where we'll have much more time, and that's a guarantee. What are they trying to do then? Because it sounds to me like you're saying that they're trying to weaponize the emotional turmoil of Black men and women in your country as a distraction, Larry, while something else happens, while we're all focused on these protests. What's going on?
Well, they have been, the deep state, they have studied the psyop of the thinking of Black people. Now, what I'm about to say, this is not castigating my own people, but you have to understand the psyop or the psychic of the Black mind, And the psychic of the Black mind, not most Black people, but a great percentage, They concentrate on this 3-tier type of thinking: violence, hypersexuality, through the prism of victimhood. So then George Soros, Bill Gates, Barack Obama, Michael Obama, all of these devils on the left, they know the pain of Black people and the trauma from centuries of systemic racism. So they are weaponizing that by creating a catastrophe of a George Floyd, okay? Now, notice here quickly here. I want to get back to these bricks because this is very important.
Very important.
So then Berkshire Hathaway owns the Acme Brick Company, who are distributing thousands of pallets of bricks all over the country.
How can they get away with that, Larry? How can they get away with depositing piles of bricks on... I've seen it. Listen, I'm endorsing what you've said, and I believe the links that you've made between these companies stand up, because I did my homework before you came on. So you're telling the truth about the links anyway, and that proves whatever it proves. Listen, excuse me for saying you're telling the truth. I'm not implying that you've ever been dishonest. And you're right about the bricks, Larry. How can they place bricks on pallets like they have done and get away with that? How does that work?
Well, Richie, number one, they've been doing this for decades. Again, Antifa is financially paying people, especially Black people, how to create mayhem. Again, let me get back to the Acme Brick Company. This is very important here concerning the paradigm of this manipulation through the psyop of emotionalism. So then the Acme Company that's owned by Berkshire Hathaway, where George Soros, sits on the board. So Warren Buffett owns the company that owns the brick company, Now the Mormon Group, Governor Jay Pritzker, and the late Robert Pritzker created the Mormon Group, and they're headquartered in Chicago, But notice this. Every city, my friend, including Minneapolis, all of the properties that have been destroyed, 95% of the properties in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, just in those few cities who have been decimated because of rioting, Notice the insurance companies, that represent the properties that have been destroyed are owned by the Berkshire Hathaway Group. Let me give you an example, The Berkshire Hathaway Assurance Company is a bond insurance company. So then, if the rioters go to jail through the Berkshire Hathaway Assurance Company, they provide bond insurance to get the rioters out of jail. The Central States Indemnity Company, that's owned by Berkshire, that owns the brick company, Acme, they provide the insurance and the financing for businesses that have been decimated because of rioting. The Clayton Homes Company, owned by Berkshire, they are going to rebuild companies, businesses and homes in Minneapolis that have been destroyed. Well, who owns the Clayton Homes Corporation? Warren Buffett. Geico Insurance, They provide insurance for the specific, not all, Brother Richie, but from 95% of the businesses that have been destroyed in Minneapolis, Chicago, East St. Louis, Los Angeles. They're owned by Warren Buffett.
95%.
Let me finish this real quick.
It's a big claim, though. Go ahead.
Including the International Metal Working Companies, or the International Metal Working Corporation, where they're going to rebuild the businesses that have been destroyed, including the Kansas Bankers Surety Company that provides the insurance for the companies that the rioters destroyed. What am I saying, Richie? I'm saying that the deep state, through the Acme Brick Company that's owned by the Berkshire Hathaway Group, including the governor of Illinois, Jay Pritzker, They're making billions of dollars, okay, through these riots. So they don't use bulldozers to destroy these homes and businesses. What do they use? They use human capital, the rioters. They don't know why they are rioting. They didn't even know George Floyd, but they're under this psyop of deception. So after they destroyed the property, okay, it is because of the Acme bricks that had destroyed the property. Then Berkshire Hathaway and the Mormon group that's owned by Warren Buffett and Governor Jay Pritzker of Illinois, a close friend of Barack Obama, they're going to make billions of dollars, okay, covering the insurance policies of the companies and businesses that the riots destroyed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I get it. It's
a game, man.
It sounds like an industry in and of itself. It sounds like an industry. And those are some really interesting connections. And look, it's mind-blowing stuff for me, because I look at, it's really neat. You know, a lot of people are saying on Twitter, it's really neat. Where I've traditionally come at this is the manipulation angle. I've never, like, you've done the forensic investigation and you've made your conclusion. And I find it very fascinating. I'm fascinated by, and thanks for doing that. And our listeners are intelligent and they can listen to what you've said and they can go and do that bit of research for themselves. Just to remind, if you've just joined the program, Bishop Larry Gaiters, nationally syndicated radio host out of New York City, is on the program. Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Check it out on YouTube. Follow Larry on Twitter. There's only one Bishop Larry Gaiters. So all of this is going on. Money is a big part of it. A psyop. What do they want to do ultimately? What is the end goal? Bear in mind, we've got about 15 to 18 minutes left to talk today. What's the ultimate goal, Larry, in your opinion?
The ultimate goal is to establish, okay, a communistical caliphate in this country, where they want to fundamentally change, okay, Brother Richie, the very foundation of what makes us the greatest nation on the face of the earth, okay? Because in our origination, we were created not to be a democratic nation, but a republic nation built upon the word of God. So they want to socially engineer, okay, the fabric of America. Why? Because they don't love the Constitution. So they're using the deaths of Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, okay, including Eric Garner here in New York City, and George Floyd. Those men, God rest their souls, they're only puppets or pawns on this global chessboard in order for the elite to fundamentally change the fabric of what makes us the United States for America. And plus, they want to destroy the presidency of Donald J. Trump by portraying him as this racist, okay? That is a psyop, and especially what I call problem, reaction, solution.
Now, hang on a second. Before you get into that, hang on. Surely to God, and I don't mean to blaspheme, surely to God, Donald J. Trump is as much a part of this agenda as anybody else. The guy is basically advocating the rolling out of the army onto the streets of the United States of America. How can anybody give Donald Trump a pass in any of this?
But you see, you have to understand that, and President Trump is right when he classified Antifa as a terrorist organization, and Black Lives Matter, they are on their way. These devils on the left, okay, they have been trying to destroy this man ever since the inauguration 3 years ago. They tried the Russian hoax. That didn't work. They tried the Ukrainian hoax. That didn't work. They unleashed COVID-19. Yes, they did that, okay, through Chinese intelligence, through the Ministry of State Security, and that's not working. Now they're creating, here comes another white cop, okay, killing a black man. This has nothing to do with racism. Let me say it again. The tragic death of our brother George Floyd had nothing to do with racism.
But you're more likely to be attacked. You're more likely to be attacked by a cop if you're black than if you're white. Now, I don't have any dog in the fight, right? Baldy, middle-aged Irishman here, Larry. But I'm going to go on the cold, hard facts. My black listeners will say, I can't believe this black bishop here. It's obvious if you're black in America, you're more likely to get the death penalty. You're more likely to end up in jail. And you're more likely to be attacked by a cop. So, listen, I'm going along with a lot of what you're saying. But there is some sort of racism that's kind of interwoven into the fabric of society, right?
And you're absolutely, Brother Richie, and there's no question. But we have to judge every case according to its merit. Now, this case in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was not a case of racism because this cop, Derek Chauvin, who is actually a crisis actor because his name is on the IMDb website, right? In other words, he's also an actor who's in several TV commercials. And that doesn't mean anything. What I'm saying, in this case, Derek Chauvin, the cop, knew George Floyd personally. This was a financial situation that had nothing to do with the death of George Floyd. Is there racism? Yes. Are there racist cops? Yes. But 99.9% of cops in our country are great men and women who are great patriots.
I disagree with you. They look like thugs, Larry. I remember growing up and you...
I'm not denying that, Richie. Listen, I'm not denying that. What I'm saying, this psyop of portraying every single cop as a killing racist dog is incorrect. But notice, as a quick side note, George Floyd and Derek Chauvin both worked, at a club in Minneapolis called the El Nuevo Rodeo Club. El Nuevo, capital N-U-E-V-O. Now, the close friend of the late George Floyd was a former NBA player, Steven Jackson, who before his NBA career played for one of those semi-pro teams, also called the Nuevo, capital N-U-E-V-O basketball team. But that's another side note. Quickly here, the club was once owned by a woman by the name of Maya Santamaria. Santa Maria. This is where we get the term Santeria, which is Latin American witchcraft. I don't want to get into that right now. But Maya Santamaria said that she did not know that Derek Chauvin and George Floyd knew each other. She's lying, And the reason why she's lying, because she knows the true reason why George Floyd was taken out. Had nothing to do with racism. Now, there are other cases where it involves racist cops, regardless of race, creed, or color. So again, getting back, and I cannot stress this enough, concerning the psychic of Black America, there is a scientific term called neuroplasticity. It represents, my brother, that the human brain becomes the very shape of what the individual is thinking at that moment. So because of 430 years of enslavement, and as a sign, you have to understand, brother, that slavery here in the Americas was really not abolished, Yes, legally it was, but slavery has only been redesigned. We talked about the Boule Secret Society last time. So what we're talking about in this case, it is a plot by people like George Soros, and Barack Obama to take back power. They don't care how they do it, Because I'm getting emails as we're speaking of this Maya Santamaria, the former nightclub owner of the El Nuevo Rodeo Club. She knew both George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. And she also knew the late Kobe Bryant. That's another topic for another day. So when I'm saying as Black people, we have to sit down, remove emotionalism out of the context here, and to see it for what it is, okay? Because they know Black people are going to react. And you know why that Black people react? Not all, my brother, but most here in America, because they have been emotionally damaged of what I call the epigenetical effect. Well, capital EPIGENETICAL, the epigenetical effect. It means that the human cell or genome becomes compromised because of past trauma, slavery, because of past trauma, oppression. So the deep state has been studying the psyop of Black America for centuries. So they use our pain, they use our trauma as a tool of manipulation through weaponizing our anger against white people to destroy, notice, our communities, so that Berkshire, okay, and these billionaires like Governor Jay Pritzker in the Berkshire Corporation and Mormon can come and rebuild communities, and they're cashing checks at the top. So then why? Because Black people are being manipulated, okay?
Well, we're all being manipulated, all of us. Not just
yes,
not just black people, it's all of us. Why can't you consider then? And I found, I mean, you're compelling to listen to, Larry. I mean, you were back in February, you are today, and I hope early in July you'll come back on for 90 minutes and we'll really bash heads and we'll have a good argument about some of this, because I love doing that. No, seriously. But why can't you concede, even, a guy with your massive brain, that that part of this agenda is to introduce a lockdown police state, the likes of which we've never seen before, and that your man in the White House is basically facilitating it. He is. He's part of this divide and conquer, angry rhetoric, stoking the flames. This guy, I've believed most of my adult life that not black, white, but red or blue, Conservative, Democrat, Labour in England, Conservative, Sinn Féin in Ireland, Fianna Fáil, it doesn't matter. They're all just puppets. And I think something else before you come back in. I think whatever George Soros is, or Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, for me, as malevolent as they might be, and I don't know, but I'm seeing some evidence that they are, they're just puppets as well, I think. But just to go back to Trump, why do you give Trump such an easy ride? He's helping this along this agenda.
Yeah. Well, see, myself as a Black conservative, I'm probably one of the most objectionable people with a grounded perspective that you will ever meet. Now, if President Trump is wrong on things, I call him out with love, you know. But from my research and insight, okay, being an unbiased Black conservative, President Trump has nothing to do with this, because you have to understand, under his presidency, the United States of America has had experienced the greatest financial resurgence in history. Barack Obama left our country in a mess, okay? Barack Obama, who had blessed, okay, the National Institutes of Health in 2014 to give the Wuhan Institute of Virology $3.7 million. Oh, the Wuhan Institute of Virology is the epicenter of COVID-19. President Trump has nothing to do with what's going on, but the media, the crack news network, okay, CNN, NBC, they're using this George Floyd catastrophe. Listen, excuse my French, they don't give a damn about George Floyd, okay?
Of course not.
They're using his life, the left is, to destroy the financial and political gains that President Trump, now he's not perfect.
Can I retort very briefly, and then I'm going to give you the final word. And I want to pick this up again with you very soon in the next few weeks. Folks, you're listening to Bishop Larry Gaiters, a very powerful voice. Larry's a nationally syndicated radio host in the US. Very, very, very thoroughly meticulously researched man. Glad to have him on, sharing his points of view on what's been happening in the United States, and we'll do it again. I'm going to give you the final word, but I'm going to say some things to you now. You won't like them.
Yes.
I won't go after Bill and Hillary because they're good people. They're not good people. They're child traffickers, and they are disaster capitalists, and that's just to say at the very least. And Bill Clinton has questions to answer about Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to be the president that moves back from all of these overseas wars. He's dropped more bombs than Obama did, and Obama dropped more bombs than Baby Bush did. I could be here all day long. He told the Israelis it's okay to have the embassy in Jerusalem. This guy's a disaster, in my opinion. Now, I've had my say. You have the final word. You've got a couple of minutes to do it, and I'm really honoured you came back today. Final word to you.
It is such a great honor to be back, and I'm looking forward to being back with you next month for a robust discussion, okay, concerning what's going on. But again, the headquarters for Antifa is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, more specifically in Springfield, Minnesota. That's where the Acme Brick Company is also located, in the same geographical location as Antifa, okay? And then why? Then you have to think to yourself quickly before we sign off today. All of these cities and towns and municipalities are being destroyed, okay? But most of these businesses and towns and principalities and municipalities are insured through Berkshire Hathaway in the Mormon group that's owned by the very same entities that's trying to destroy President Trump, okay? See, brother, you have to look at this in layers. This is what we call the compartmentalization of darkness, okay? So you got Bill Gates, you got Governor Jay Pritzker, okay? Then you got Warren Buffett, okay? They were heavy financial backers of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and they're financially backing Uncle Joe, Sleepy, Crippin, Sniffin' Biden. So this is a major conspiracy to destroy communities, and at the same time, these devils are cashing checks at the top. They're not using, okay, earth-moving equipment to destroy Minneapolis. They're using human cargo called the rioters. They're being used and they're being manipulated, and that is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. I'm looking forward to being back with you next month, my brother.
Can't wait, Larry. 20 seconds. Where should people go to find out more about what you've been telling us today?
Absolutely. They can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go into YouTube and type in Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Again, Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And they can also check us out on liferadionj.com, liferadionj.com/Gaiters. That's Gaiters. Quickly, and with your permission, I would love to give out our PayPal link for all of you who want to financially support our global assignment that God has given us through Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Go to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. Again, one more time, paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. And they can follow me on Twitter, okay? My Twitter handle is @Bishop L. Gaiters, @Bishop L. Gaiters. That's Gaiters. Thank you so much, Brother Richie. I'm looking forward to being back on your powerful show next month.
Yeah, we'll do a whole show. We'll do a whole show, Larry. Yeah, that's you have my word on it. Thanks for coming back today. Loved having you on. Bishop Larry Gaiters, live on the Richie Allen Radio Show, Wednesday's program. It is June 3rd. Thanks again to Larry. Right, we're going to go to London. I think to London. It could be to Washington. We're going to get the headlines anywho. And when we come back, I'll read some of your tweets, and we'll be chatting. We're going back to the US. I can't wait for that. We're going back to the US to speak with John Klyczek, and that's about education in the United States. So it's over to the US for headlines, I believe.
From FSN in Washington, I'm Nina Maria Potts with the latest world headlines. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says he opposes the use of a 19th century law to deploy American troops onto the streets of the country's cities. Tens of thousands of people across the U.S. are continuing their protests over the killing of unarmed African-American George Floyd. Former U.S. President Barack Obama is preparing to speak on the issue later. And the US has announced it will block Chinese airlines from flying passengers to and from the US starting June the 16th.
Thank you, Nina Maria. This is the Richie Allen Radio Show live from Salford in Greater Manchester. It is, it's a pretty miserable old day compared to the weather we've been having. You don't want to miss my next guest. Before we get there, I'll be back with you in 60 seconds and I'll read some of your tweets.
Renowned healer Mark Biersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Biersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbiersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Welcome back to the program. Ewan tweets, Richie, Trump is playing his part in the game just the same as his opposition are playing their part. Question is, who owns the game? Rhetorical question, says Ewan. Hi, Ewan. Hi to Colin in Dublin. How you doing, Colin? Who's been corresponding on Twitter with Bishop Larry Gaiters. Hi to Faisal there as well. There is a bit of discussion going on about the video and its release into the public domain. It's a very distressing thing, that video, you know. I've seen a lot of things over the years. I was a very early adopter of liveleak.com, which of course is fronted by one of the men who own it, basically, Hayden Hewitt of Manchester fame. And, you know, there were some very raw videos on LiveLeak early on, coming out of places like Libya and, well, going back before that, Afghanistan and Iraq. I've seen quite a bit. But it's a distressing thing to see a man in that situation, finding himself in that situation. And I mean that. Keith says, Richie, ask Larry about QAnon. Sorry, Keith, I will get into it. But if you tweet Larry, he's a very polite man. I'm sure he'll give you an answer on Twitter himself. Put out a call for Peter Hitchens to come on this radio program. I'm waiting to hear back from him. I'm interested. Look, Peter Hitchens doesn't need this radio program. He's got his Daily Mail column, but it's really only talk radio and occasionally LBC that invite him on. So I've invited him on to say, look, come on and have a chat with us. We'll see how it goes. Lots of irons in the fire. I've got some fascinating people coming on the program next week. I'm going to give you a couple of heads up. Garland Nixon is another very well-known radio host in the United States. Garland is an African-American man. He's going to be on the program. I mentioned the rapper and author and Oxford graduate, very smart guy. Zuby was on Sky News today. I had to listen to Zuby, and he was absolutely fascinating. He'll be on the program as well with me next week, and I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, I thought I do. It's a bit maudlin, but I do have a tune. This is Radiohead, and when we come back from Radiohead, I'll be joined by my next guest. You don't want to miss him. It's John Klyczek, hugely interesting man with a lot of very important things to say. Wednesday's show. Yeah, music from Radiohead, High and Dry, the Richie Allen Radio Show, 12 minutes past 6 UK time. Welcome back to the programme. Good to be with you. This is huge. UK pupils began returning to schools on Monday. Foundation year and year 6, I think, and year 3. Social distancing rules apply. The children can't touch one another. They've got to stay 2 meters apart. They've got to be washing their hands all of the time. Parents can't come near the school. it's all very scary, very dystopian, very Orwellian. And my next guest has written some brilliant articles, and he's written a brilliant book by all accounts, which I haven't read, but I'll be getting it because it's important. And we've got a mutual friend, Gareth Icke, of course, old and good friend of mine. I don't have to tell you who Gareth Icke is. And my next guest has had his most recent article. Well, he's had several articles published on davidicke.com about education and about what's going to happen in the very near future to education and the part that technology and artificial intelligence is going to play in it. And it's scary. It isn't fear porn because it's factual. It's really happening. And I would imagine that very few people know anything about it. So let me tell you a little bit about him before we get him on. Fascinating man. He's a college professor with a master's degree in English. And he's a mixed martial arts expert as well. He's written a book called School World Order, the Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. I'm delighted that that book was published by Trine Day Books, and I know a lot about Trine Day and the people who set it up, and I've interviewed many Trine Day authors over the years. This is huge. He's studied and worked on the history of global eugenics and Aldous Huxley's dystopic novel Brave New World. Let's welcome to the programme John Klyczek. John, you're very welcome. And first of all, I hope I pronounced your surname properly.
It's close. It's pretty close. It's Klyczek, but good enough for me.
Klyczek. No, I've got to get it right, John. I've got to get it right. Hey, listen, it's a real honour. Thanks for connecting to me, first of all. I really appreciate you doing that. And thanks for agreeing to come on today at short notice. It's hugely important. First question is, tell us about your book, School World Order, the Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. I understand what that means. Put it in simple terms for our listeners. What's happening to and what is meant to happen to education going forward?
Okay, thanks. So there's two ways that we could break the book down into two sections. So first is the corporatization of education. That basically means turning public schools into public-private partnerships. In the U.S., we got these things called charter schools, which are neither public nor private. They're basically either nonprofit or for-profit corporations that get public tax dollars to fund their services. And then there's other projects that can help privatize public school, things called vouchers. So you can, if you're a parent, you can get the government to give you some money, and then you can take that to go to a private school, or you can go to a separate school out of district. And then there's other ways like tax credits that they can take public dollars and funnel them into corporate schools. In the UK, I think y'all have free schools and academies. So I think the free schools, would be the equivalent of our charter schools. And it's very similar, corporatization there for an analog. Then the second part would be how technology plays a role in the corporatization. And the book basically looks at three branches of technology that will all use various artificial intelligence algorithms. The first is adaptive learning software, which conditions the mind, cognitive, behavioral, the thinking part. The second is socio-emotional learning. These are biofeedback wearables that condition the emotions through neurofeedback. And then the third is what they call precision education, which has to do with scanning DNA to look at your genetic IQ. And all of this is supposed to personalize your lessons based on a host of these different algorithms. Eventually, it will go ahead. Yes, sir.
Do you want to go through those again one by one, John? Because this is scary stuff. Just even hearing that described. And of course, before you came on, I was beavering away all afternoon, cross-referencing the claims made in the article that's on davidicke.com. Go to davidicke.com and read this article, by the way. I'll put a link out to it. So go through those steps again, if you don't mind, one by one. We've got loads of time. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with the adaptive learning software. That's the closest on the front lines to be aggregated into the actual schools. Precision ed is kind of down the line, and so this socio-emotional biofeedback stuff is getting close too. So the adaptive learning software is basically based on something called the Skinner box, B.F. Skinner's teaching machine or programmed instruction. So basically it works on what's called stimulus response psychological conditioning, which bypasses the thinking process and basically conditions people at the nervous system level. So easy way to understand stimulus response is Pavlov's dog. The stimulus is the food. The response is the salivation. You can condition the dog to have other responses if you associate artificial stimuli with the natural stimuli, so that you can, classical example, ring the bell, and the dog will salivate in association with the food. Eventually, you can remove the food, and the dog will just salivate with the bell. So that was set up by Wilhelm Wundt over 100 years ago. But, now we would call it operant conditioning. So you just add punishments and rewards, and then B.F. Skinner added 4 quadrants. So positive and negative punishment, positive and negative reward. It just has to do with, are you adding a stimulus or removing a stimulus to increase or deter a particular behavior? Okay, you can take that system and instead of, like the gold star and the detention, which would be some of the early ways that they would implement it, or the bell that rings in between classes to signal you to compartmentalize, this math is over, shut that part of your brain down, English is on, they don't relate, turn this part on. It also, they converted that stimulus response mechanism into these analog teaching boxes. So you can look on the Smithsonian Institute to take a look at them. Basic way to give you a good example visual would be like those, they used to call them the Viewmasters, those Disney Viewmasters. So they'd be like these goggles when you're a kid, you put these goggles on, it's got this, you remember those, right? It's got the Disney wheel and it's got the pictures, and you click the button and you see a different image. Well, take that wheel, turn it into a reel of tape, and put questions on it, maybe multiple choice questions or short answer questions. That's the stimulus. You put it in a gearbox because they didn't have digital computers and Windows yet. So you turn the gear one way, you respond to the stimulus, which is the question. Your response is what you answer, what you scribe onto it. And as you click through it, it's going to give you either, if you do well, it'll maybe move you faster onto some higher academic training. If you don't do so well, it'll remediate you. He even hooked up, some of them would distribute chocolate if you'd get a correct answer. So there's the reward mechanism. And largely, though, what those were going to be, if you didn't do so good on them, they would put you into what is now called the career pathways. So basically, this, the algorithm in the machine says you're not smart enough to, go on to academics. So we're gonna funnel you. We're gonna tell you what job you're gonna work, and we're gonna train you for that on these algorithms. So the adaptive learning software is the same exact thing. Just replace the reel of tape and the gears with digital windows and clicks on a mouse. You can add some videos and some audio to that. So I guess it's a little more interactive, but it's that principle built on a digital window. And some of the adaptive learning software companies would be Clever, Smart Sparrow, Dreambox, Newton with a K, Knewton. Pearson Education has funded a lot of these. People like Bilderberger, Peter Thiel has funded them. And so so they've got a host of those that you can get from several different companies.
And these, when I think of education, when I think of primary school, I remember being in a classroom with a teacher, and all we had, and I went to primary school in 1979, 1980, up till 1986, I think. And we would have had a teacher with a blackboard and some coloured sticks of chalk, and we would have had some books. That would have been it, really. And we're now talking about children going into classrooms where they might be holding a laptop, they might be holding a tablet or a smartphone or a smart device, and increasingly the interaction with the teacher is becoming less and less. Is that where we're going here?
Yeah, for sure. So the adaptive learning software, what it does is it automates a bunch of a large portion of the instruction. It's not artificial general intelligence, so it's not like conscious like a human being yet. But they want to, especially now that we're on lockdown, they want to go to asynchronous learning, which means even when they convert to online, most schools are not synchronous, meaning everybody's, on a Zoom meeting together. Sometimes they just set up a bunch of these modules and then say, work at your own pace. Well, that means the students are going to want feedback at all hours of the day and night. A human being can't keep up with that. So, the solution for them is to automate. And eventually, the data, all this stuff works on data mining and improving. That's how it personalizes the lessons. It has to be able to adjust to what you're doing. So it has to be able to adjust to itself, which means, you're always feeding this stuff, and it's moving towards artificial general intelligence eventually. And I should mention that, over here, they just deregulated some of our distance learning rules. The bill is 85 FR 18638. And there's a clause in there that says, we can't regulate the AI fast enough, as fast as it evolves in terms of the algorithms. So we're going to go ahead and get out of the way, and we're not going to punish any schools or any companies that want to come up with a new software algorithm without our prior approval. So
this shocked me, by the way, John. This shocked me. When I read this, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. What John is saying, and it's hugely important, is the Department of Education in the United States has deregulated the rules for distance learning and innovation. And what that is allowing is basically money to be funneled into some of the biggest corporations in the world, technology corporations. And those corporations will eventually create schools, virtual schools, while getting rid of the traditional schools that we described a moment ago. Teachers will disappear completely. This is a brilliant article, John. It's very important. And this adaptive learning, artificial intelligence will replace it. Was it the COVID lockdown that allowed the Department of Education to do this under Betsy DeVos, or would it have happened anyway? And where is the media asking questions about it?
Good questions, right? So most people say, well, hey, we're going to move in that direction anyways. There's a lot of people pitching it like this is a great opportunity to get it done faster. But really, I guess there's some people in the media. Naomi Klein did an article called "The Screen New Deal," not the green, but Screen New Deal, and she's I don't agree with her on the contact tracing stuff at all. But as far as looking at education and how they're going to, big tech is going to privatize, is going to capitalize on this, what she calls disaster capitalists are going to use their shock doctrine to ram this stuff through. But this stuff is actually old. It starts in the 1980s with something called Project BEST, Better Education Skills Through Technology. So my book builds partially on the research of, largely on the research of, there's a few other main sources, Anthony Sutton's Introduction to the Order of Skull and Bones, and my publisher Chris Milligan's work with him as well. But Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt is the author of The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, and she worked for President Ronald Reagan's Department of Education, and she blew the whistle on Project BEST. And it's everything we're talking about. And that's basically how I started writing the book, because at a time when my state was stalling on the budget a few years ago, some disaster capitalists there were trying to privatize school at the time by starving people out of public funds. And you saw Rauner talking about school choice, which is corporate schools, cradle to career, which is workforce training. I saw P20 council conferences, that's public-private partnerships. And then I just saw how big the virtual schools and things were booming. So the Project BEST was set up by Secretary of Education T.H. Bell. And then a year later, he handed it off to his successor, Secretary of Education Bill Bennett. Now, Bill Bennett set up K-12 Inc., which is one of the largest virtual schools. So, those, I guess those free schools in the UK, the charter schools here, well, they have some that are virtual schools. It's basically a totally online school, K-12 Inc. being one of the biggest. Now, Peter Thiel was Bill Bennett's speechwriter when he was Secretary of Education. I have a FOIA request that shows that Betsy DeVos met privately with Peter Thiel on one of her tours as Secretary of Education. Betsy DeVos herself is a main funder, or was a main funder, of K-12 Inc. And then as Secretary of Ed, in addition to all the charter schools, spent millions of dollars on charter schools before she became secretary. She's been working with the American Legislative Exchange Council, which wrote this thing called the Virtual Public Schools Act, which they're a corporatist lobbying group. They write these boilerplate bills, and they send them out to state and federal congressmen and women to put in these bills that would legalize and set up the virtual schools.
How do you not throw up in your mouth when you're doing that research? Because I'm not going to, virtue signal here. This isn't a case of, me screaming, won't somebody please think of the children? But this is unimaginably evil, what you've just described to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough when you just go ahead and deregulate stuff for any corporations to just have their way. But we're literally looking at the people that are writing the deregulations are people that have been planning this for 50 years and putting their money into. I mean, it's like hands in the cookie jar stuff. How do I not throw up is, I keep my feet in a lot of different worlds and trying to be friends with everybody as much as I can. As a teacher, I write. I've been writing this stuff for a long time, but there's a lot of true believers in this stuff, and I'm friends with a lot of them just because I work with them and stuff. So,
but how can anybody believe? Sorry, let me just remind our listeners who we're speaking to. John Klyczek is our guest, and again, another very, very smart guy. Masters in English, college professor, literary expert, and mixed martial arts participant and enthusiast, which is probably where you get the zen from, and which helps you not go absolutely crazy. What he's describing is not just the privatization of education for children in the United States and in the UK and everywhere else. It's the introduction of virtual online schools where a child will eventually be taught by a self-thinking, modulating artificial intelligence creation. And we often talk about the money. John's website, by the way, is schoolworldorder.info. Schoolworldorder.info. Thanks again to Gareth and the guys at davidike.com for drawing attention to you, because you're a very smart guy, John. And this neatly ties in with so much of what we've been talking about on our programs for years. You've got to get a copy of School World Order. I'll tell you, Susan on Twitter and lots of people on Twitter are saying, Richie, where do we get a copy of this book? Well, go to schoolworldorder.info and connect with John Klyczek there. So you've done the homework, the investigative journalism, and you've shown all the dirty, filthy corporations, the backroom deals with the politicians over decades that have allowed this to happen. This is where maybe we'll part company here. I don't mean physically, we'll still talk, but maybe we'll come at it from different angles. Why? It can't just be about money, can it? Can it just be exclusively about corporations wanting to just make loads of money out of providing online schooling for children, or is there something else going on, John?
Yeah, well, I would say there's two things. And if you want to look way down the road, and I know you have, and Gareth has, and David has, one is we'll call it social credit, and the other one we'll call it transhumanism, and they both go together. So, as I mentioned, if you're building this, as much as the AI is helping you learn and it's teaching you, it's taking data from you, so it's developing and learning as well. So it's going to also learn faster, as the Department of Education admits, than we can keep up with. So what happens when AI can teach as good as or better than me? Well, then that means that not only have we automated physical labor, but we've automated intellectual labor. It means human thinking itself is obsolete. And so thanks to Elon Musk with his Neuralink, and this is one of the reasons he says he's making it, is because we're going to be obsolete when AI gets to that level. So that Neuralink, that brain-computer interface, is designed to help you basically interface with AI and to compete with it. Now, when you do that, you'll be basically plugged into a social credit system. I mentioned those three types of technologies: the adaptive learning software, which tracks your thinking and your behavior, the socio-emotional, which tracks your emotion, and then the precision ed, which is going to track your DNA, your biology. All of that stuff, that's basically your healthcare, your mental health, your education records, so your HIPAA and your FERPA records, what they call them in the U.S., are all going to get aggregated together, and they'll give you something called social credit. And, if you have your brain chip in, it can be modulated straight from your brain-computer interface. So if your audience hasn't ever seen any of those videos of what the social credit system looks like, there's an ABC documentary that gives you good optics. Basically, financial credit works, and they have that element of it that, based on how you spend your money, you get better or worse interest rates, but this also is going to track not just how you spend your money, what you post online, what you post on your adaptive learning software, how you behave in public, because they have 3D facial recognition cameras in real time, and it's going to aggregate all that, and it's going to give you not just access to your money, but access to housing, healthcare, infrastructure, education. They can put you on a political blacklist like they do the Uyghurs out there. And all that will be aggregated for social credit directly plugged into your brain-computer interface, your transhuman brain-computer interface.
If somebody is listening to this now and they say, John just said that Musk, with his neural implant, this brain chip that they've got ready to go, and I know Musk has said this, he wants us to be able to compete when artificial intelligence grows beyond our control and basically connect with it, interface with it. There are people listening to this and they will say, this is fanciful sci-fi nonsense. There's no way we're going down this road. And I don't know whether they'll say that because they're very scared or very nervous, or whether they just can't see it happening. How could we ever end up in some sort of human dystopian reality that you just described there? How far away do you think that is if we continue down the path we're traveling?
Man, with everything that's going on right now with COVID, and now we got all the freaking unrest. Man, I was on the Ed Opperman report a few months right before COVID, and he asked me the same thing. And I said, I used Ray Kurzweil, chief of engineering at Google. His predictions for the singularity are like 2030 or 2045, somewhere in between that range. And that was what I used. I just went with their numbers. But I also said, if the right crisis happened, it could be sooner. And then not even a month later, we get COVID. And I say the contact tracing is the beginning of social credit in America and in the UK and places that don't have it other than China, which is, what they're going to do is basically they're basically going to break HIPAA rules. They're going to break your privacy rules regarding your medical records. And look, some of the schools are already talking about how they can help with FERPA records. Okay, with the contact tracing, which means that FERPA records are going to get mixed with HIPAA records because the people overseeing those are going to be contributing to the contact tracing. And now that they've got all the unrest and the protesting and the rioting, I saw that in Minnesota, they're using the contact tracing app to trace protesters. So there's the criminal justice, the healthcare, and the education, all the data blurred together. Once you put all that data in the same database, you can use it for social credit. It's just a matter of, how big tech wants to aggregate it and what they want to use it for. Do they want to just, tell you what job you're going to use? Do they want to do pre-crime? So I hate to say it, but it's a lot closer than I ever hoped I would get to.
Are they really using contact tracing in Minneapolis? Are they?
Yeah, it was a report by the chief or the mayor or somebody. It's on my Twitter. I can't remember the details offside. I just put it up there the other day. But yeah, they are, and I think some other states are as well. And then I saw in New Jersey. I think they're doing it out there in the UK. They're using drones to enforce social distancing.
Yeah.
And. So, they've got apps that will put like a little, bubble around you, a 6-foot bubble. All of that is basically, anything that fits into this surveillance capitalism grid. It's basically, building that social credit system. It's just a matter of when they decide how they decide to use it, basically. And by the way, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. We're here to hear you. Go ahead, John.
The only thing I was going to say is, we've already built most of it for the last 10 years with our phones and our social media and everything else. So, all of that is part of it as well.
We've got John Klyczek, and John is going to stay with me till the end of the program. Schoolworldorder.info. He's been looking into how corporations are taking over schools in the United States. It's happening here as well. And how teachers and bricks and mortar classrooms will be replaced basically by online learning exclusively managed by artificial intelligence. beings or entities, and it's not a crazy conspiracy theory. It's a fact, and it's something that John's been doing it for years, but the mainstream media in recent years, and particularly in the last 18 months, some of the conservative newspapers have had the courage to talk about this. This is coming down the line. It really is. The digital health passport, which there is a company in Manchester, I'm speaking to you from Greater Manchester in the UK, they've got one ready to go. You talked about social crediting. We're going to be, I would have thought, John, kind of coerced into adopting the technology rather than being forced to do so, because reading between the lines of what you're saying, the sorts of things that you would like to do on a day-to-day basis might become more difficult if you haven't accepted the app on your phone or whatnot. Is that what I'm deducing from what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's super hairy out here right now. I'm not in the heat of it, but I don't have to go far to see smashed up stuff. My little pocket's pretty cool. But by the way, we're all different colors here. I got one neighbor's black, one neighbor's Mexican. I'm white. My wife's black. Okay, so we're cool over here. But what probably I'm hoping that it dies down sooner than later. And when it does, you're right. They don't have to go around and forcibly do anything. They can just. The first thing I'm sure they'll do, I imagine this is where the first, we'll just call it civil battle, legal, political pushback will be, I think, when they open up certain businesses like education. I imagine that'll be one of the first places they say that you're going to need to have your immunity passport to get in there. And then that'll be a time for people to decide, will they want to opt out? Do you want to, not go back to work and strike going to work? And then maybe they'll back off of it. But I think that'll be how it starts. And they won't have to come and stick you with a needle or anything. They'll just say, hey, you're not going to work, which means you're not getting paid, which means you're not eating until we know you're immune. So yeah.
Horribly scary thing today. National media here in the UK were reporting on a guy called Peter Vazak, and he's with the Eco Health Alliance. And I understand I asked a friend of mine to do a bit of looking into their background today. Through a couple of connections, they're connected to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I don't think they've gotten enormous amounts of money, but there's a connection anyway. Well, basically what this guy was saying today was, he was saying that coronavirus is just the beginning, and he reckons that there might be 1.7 million dangerous new viruses out there lurking, wait for it, John, lurking in the shadows. And at the moment, scientists around the world are working not just on a vaccine for COVID, but they're working on vaccines and medication for all of these new viruses, so that when the virus hits, they'll be ready to go. And the alarm bells go off in my head, and I think, well, here we are, a world in the very, very near future whereby we will be requested or expected to, like they expect us to do with our dogs and our cats, get booster shots every 12 months. And if you don't, well, you're a New York Jets fan, are you? Well, you won't be getting a season ticket this year. Yeah, you want to go to that college, do you? Sorry, but you've got to have these. And of course that comes around, and you might not want to deal with this, and if so, I will afford you the utmost respect. But some of our listeners, and you mentioned Gareth, you mentioned David, they think that forced vaccination or mandated vaccination by proxy, by coercion, is ultimately connected to this transhumanism thing. On your travels, have you seen any evidence of that?
I've thought about it several times. First of all, let's start with this. Forced vaccination violates the Nuremberg Codes. Okay, so we're going to violate the Nuremberg Codes. It's just that human rights rule that basically says you can't forcibly medicate people, that they have to give you their consent and they have to be informed. It's to prevent that concentration camp stuff that Nazis did. And by the way, it's eugenics is what it is what we're talking about, and it all fits together because transhumanism comes out of eugenics. Okay, Julian Huxley was the first director general of UNESCO, right? He was president of British Eugenics Society. UNESCO, its purposes and its philosophy, talks about how he wants global eugenics all up and down it. Okay, and if they can basically people freak out about what's in the vaccine. Is it got nanobots, or is it got other toxic stuff in it? Regardless of what's in it, maybe it's harmless, right? If they can set the precedent by violating the Nuremberg Code to say that you have, for the sake of public health, you must be vaccinated. If they can, under the guise of public health, forcibly stick anything in your body to protect the larger public health system, then they'll have set the legal precedent to say that for mental health purposes, you have to have a brain chip with a particular algorithm. This is basically communitarian stuff where basically the well-being of the state or the well-being of the community supersedes the individual's rights, the individual's consent. And so, all we have to do is have enough data from enough experts that say this is the best route to go, and they'll have set the precedent. And if you don't think that would do that in the United States, there's legal precedent for that. Oliver Wendell Holmes used a mandatory vaccine law to basically justify the eugenic sterilization of Carrie Buck. And I can't remember the name of the case that was the forced vaccination case, but it's the Carrie Buck case is famous, all right? And so they've already done that, and so yes, that will absolutely, at the very least, set the legal precedent. So that can't happen. We have to civilly disobey that.
Yeah, the case you're talking about was a pastor who arrived in the United States from Turkey, I believe, in the early 20th century, and didn't want to be vaccinated. Around about the time they were talking about smallpox, or maybe it was TB, I don't know. And he was fined for not having his shot. He was fined $5, which was a lot of money back in the early 20th century. And he took it to the US Supreme Court, and he lost. I can't remember the names of the guys involved, but I studied it recently for a segment, because Alan Dershowitz, of course, the infamous lawyer, Dershowitz has been talking to Jason Goodman, who did a very good job with him. And Dershowitz says, yes, if the state wants to drag you kicking and screaming to a doctor's office, it reserves the right to do so because there is a legal precedent. You are right. I would love to be, interrupting you and shouting you down, John, but I can't do it because it's a fact. These are things that sometimes you can't actually believe you're saying these things out loud, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I believe, though, that evil has to feed on good. And if it somehow is able to eat up all of it, then it'll collapse under its own weight. And the other way to say that is it only takes a little mustard seed of some good to turn the whole thing around. There was a woman in Texas that I say she's a hero and a model for how to handle these types of encroachments. And what did she do? She cut hair in her house. She was running out of money, and she cut hair to feed her kids, and the judge in Texas put her in jail, and said, well, I'll let you out if you apologize for putting the public health at risk. She said, I'm not going to apologize for taking care of my kid. You're crazy. And guess what happened? The people supported her, and the judge had to let her off. So don't go out and do what's going on now. Don't do anything violent or offensive. That's only going to justify them to be more authoritarian. Simple things like just opt out. Just don't do it. Hey, hunger strike. There's ways. I think there are very simple answers to these really big problems. We just need to realize who we are and just say that.
Non-violent civil disobedience. Let me ask you this. Let's go back to education. And I'm going to mention once again, you're listening today to John Klyczek. Now, John is a smart man, college professor, author, master's in English, has written the book School World Order, published by Trine Day Books. Go to the website schoolworldorder.info. This disgusting future for schools, children taught by these artificial intelligence, whatever they are, and their career pathways being chosen for them by robots, effectively. You would have imagined that, you would like to imagine that parents would try and opt out of that. That parents in the near future would say, no, I will keep my son, Michael, or my daughter home, and I won't subject them to that. Is there any hope, John, that parents will say, absolutely no way?
I think there are a lot of people that are opting out in the ways that they can. And, funny enough, I've gotten more attention. The book has gotten so much more attention now that this has happened. It's just totally, because everybody's looking, even friends. I got friends, like I said, I keep feet in two world. And, some people are like, hey, man, all that stuff you were talking about, it's like I'm sitting at home and my kids are all on these screens, and so he calls me all the time and is like, hey, well, asking me things. So I think, and this goes back to what I say, the more the evil shows its face, I think the more people are going to at least ask questions. And look, again, it can start even simpler. You don't have to know all this stuff about which software is better, adaptive learning and what kind of algorithms are they running. You could do very simple things in your everyday life by just minimizing what types of technology you use. Don't use Google. Use a search engine that doesn't track you. Don't download every free app on your phone that basically has got surveillance tracking all over. Maybe get a flip phone. I mean, don't let the phone be a babysitter for your kids. I'm sure you've seen, plenty of examples. You're out in public and there's a family and the little boy or little girl is, hyperactive or wants attention, and they give him or her the device. All right. I mean, so until that mentality and that attitude changes, and only when that does, then I think that can blossom into, people being more aware of, the school technology and branch out from there in nice little small waves.
Can I ask you the obvious question I didn't ask earlier on? I didn't want to get too personal. Do you have your own children, John?
No, I don't. The wife and I cannot have kids.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. We don't either. We'd like to, because I suppose people listening to this who do have children, it's going to sound very, very worrying for them. And I don't know if you've given a bit of hope there. And I think there is hope because, just don't consent, This is what's happening. If you find yourself in a situation where the Board of Education or your school is getting in touch to say that the classroom is going to change in such a way that you think is going to be pretty awful for your child, well, stand up and speak out and speak to other parents. I say this a lot, John. One of the things that technology has done, ironically, they say that the technology has brought us all closer together because we're so connected. But it hasn't, has it, John? It's divided us. It's pushed us away from one another. And, physical contact, physical meetings. That's one of the things I'm really disgusted by this whole coronavirus plandemic or pandemic, whatever it is that it's working at the speed of light to keep people away from one another. What do you think?
Yeah, there was the big hashtag for Orwellian hashtag alone together, right? Which is a contradiction of terms, which is, a problem in itself. I think a lot of people carry a lot of contradictions in their head and don't realize it, and then they act out in emotional ways based on that. But yeah, it's absolutely, it keeps us, we're more connected, but all the data shows that as connected as we are, we actually feel more isolated. And, they've got all these mental health issues that they say are popping up from screen addiction. And by the way, that's another way that COVID is pushing forward the socio-emotional learning stuff, which is, has to do with biofeedback stuff. Basically, it's so they'll track stuff like your skin conductivity through stuff called galvanic skin response monitors. That's the Gates Foundation funded those. There's a company called BrainCo that scans your EEGs. There's NeuroCore funded by Betsy DeVos. She used to sit on the board. It does EEG scanning to give you ADHD treatments. All this stuff is supposed to help you with your if you have disabilities or cognitive learning disabilities in the socio-emotional learning realm. But you might be seeing on your own, basically they have these, COVID is making people anxious at home. So they've got the Calm app and these different meditation apps. And those are, it all works on the same technology as like those Fitbits and other exercise apps. It's just looking at all these different biofeedback algorithms. Either to help you with your exercise, to keep calm, or to help you get personalized learning. But don't think, as we just mentioned, that especially if that thing is free, that it's not taking that data and sending it somewhere else. So like we mentioned, just don't use it. You know what I mean? It's a simple way. All this stuff works by consent and participation. Just don't use it.
Just don't do it. Please stay in touch with us, John. I've put a link out to your website, and I've got to mention there, it's not going to be easy for me to say this. You can follow John on Twitter. It's at Professor Taoist. That's at Professor TAOIST. Please follow him there. Do go to the website that I've just given you. I've just tweeted it out there. Please go to schoolworldorder.info. John is a college professor, an author, a martial arts enthusiast. He's a black belt in Taekwondo. And I'll give you the final word, John, if you do want to say anything to wrap up with. Thanks for writing those articles. Thanks for writing the book. I'm going to get a copy of your book. You don't have to send it to me. I'm going to buy a copy of your book. I'll get it from your website. Final word to you. I think we've said it all, but I'll give you the last 30 seconds. Thanks for your time today.
I'll just say thanks for having me on. Thanks for your audience. And I'll send you one of those for free. I got a big stack of them here. I'm happy to send you one. It was a real pleasure to be here. Real honor. And thanks a lot.
And stay in touch, John. Come back, because we'll follow up on this. There will be lots to talk about in the near future. So I hope you'll come back on again.
Absolutely, for sure.
Thanks, John. That was John Klyczek. And it's depressing, isn't it? A lovely man. Lovely manner about him. Lively. Enthusiastic. I could listen to him. This is depressing shit, this, isn't it? I've just sent a message to Jean Ann. I'm not sad fishing here now. This isn't sad fishing, this one of these new wonderful terms that has entered our lexicon. I don't want any sympathy. But this is what depresses me as a journalist, as somebody who's worked in mainstream media. The connections that John made earlier on in the conversation about the Secretary of Education and her background, commercially, her corporate background, and how they go about doing this, how they go about deregulating education to allow corporations who want to present a new learning experience for your children to do away with traditional teaching and classrooms and get your child basically glued to a screen for 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day, and eventually to be interacting with an alien entity. It didn't come from the planet Zog or from Mongo, but it's an alien entity. It's an artificial, it's a robot that can think for itself and can learn for itself, interacting with your child and making decisions for your child's future, for their career pathway. And you have Musk saying, yeah, and it's going to be difficult for people then to compete with these intelligences. So best that you have the neural device, the brain chip. Jesus, Mary and Holy Saint fucking Joseph, you know. And that's why I lost my temper at the end of the monologue. And I shouted a little bit. People are being called racist. Not just white people, black people are being called racist. Idiots are calling each other racist. Oh, you don't believe that racism exists. That's because your white privilege makes you a racist. You have white people calling black people racists. Virtue signaling Olympics on Twitter. People being coerced into participating lest they be frowned upon by the herd. You've got to take a knee. You've got to do more. Do you see all those articles yesterday written by various black celebrities in the Metro, in the Guardian? You've even got this pop star Harry Styles saying that not being racist is not good enough anymore. It's not good enough not to hate black people. You've got to be doing more. You've got to be saying it loud so that people can hear you say it. You've got to be participating. This mindless fucking bollocks is going on, while what you've just heard John Klyczek describe is really happening. Social credit system, digital health passports, mandatory vaccination by coercion. Yeah, we won't drag you to the doctor's office, but we'll make your life impossible if you don't have it. Boston Dynamics replacing the thuggish fucking police that you see around the world with robot police. the army taking over policing, the army getting involved with giving out vaccines and taking blood samples from people. But we won't protest any of that or stand up against it and say that we're not having it. Or we won't say over our dead bodies. No, we won't. No, we will drown in a fucking sea of identity politics. Fighting with one another over which of us is the biggest victim as all of this shit goes down. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.